This story will cover from then to now and next, all about change, how to turn losers into winners. Tropical, rain, forest is what it says on the camera. The tropics. Hot, yes, and need to cool down. Very diverse, from huge buffalo with lots of rain, yes. To elephants in the forest. To delicate butterflies, animals and plants of millions of species dependent on rain and trees and heat. The rain is true today and the heat, but for the tropical rain forest, the trees are not now what they were. They're losing, but winning too. This vital band of green around the equator includes Asia, South and Central America, and Africa. We'll reveal how, in a remarkable story that starts on the Congo Zaire River in Central Africa, back in 1988, when a dedicated conservationist, Carl Amann, saw for himself what was happening to the rainforest there, its impact on the trees, and now logs, and their inhabitants, and one in particular, a baby chimpanzee. This is what his camera said.
And so it happened that Carl and Catherine would take on something that was to change their lives, and certainly the life of the chimp, whom they christened Umze. It was knowing chimps and then seeing them used as food that really got to Carl. It was a passion that would take him deep into the jungle, where the wild chimps were. From the city, roads radiate in all directions through the forest. And it's the roads that are part of the problem. They're increasing, sometimes with foreign aid or backed by large banks. And they provide easy access into the very heart of Africa. Here, Carl will try to become part of a pygmy village and befriend both the pygmies and the Bantus who he believes hunt from here. Out there in the jungle. In a very different home for a chimp.
No, Mzee. Mzee!
Mzee.
He reacts to a rabbit.
Now let's go!
Pee-pee. Pee-pee.
You better have Woogie really good.
No! Let's go! Let's go! Stop it, Mzee. It's dangerous now. Let's go!
Catherine says she can't ignore Mzee or shut him away. It's like living with a retarded child, and hopefully a happy one, at least compared with circumstances in the wild. they tell him it's too heavy to carry home. But they do. A male gorilla, probably the one that charged the hunter in defense. Carl learns that sometimes up to 5 more females can be shot if they don't flee after the male has been killed. As they say, there's a snare at every rat hole, and there's hardly anything left to catch. Good food. The rest will be moved on, and here the plot thickens a lot, as Karl Amann will find out. Elephants at the bottom of the garden.
Carl's film was certainly showing the huge contrasts in Mazet's life, after and before, increasingly linked to our own lifestyles. Bananas, logs, bushmeat.
Maybe destined for France, Germany, or Britain. The European Union is the most important market from Africa. About 80% of exports go to Europe. So the prey, the predator, and the timber make their steady journey down the logging roads to the big city. There could be a more sinister cargo too. Dreaded diseases like HIV and Ebola may be carried by monkeys and chimps. In neighboring Gabon, 13 villagers died after eating a chimp. Even touching an infected gorilla can start an outbreak of catastrophe. With that in mind, you'd think bananas would sell better than bush meat, but apparently not so.
Oh, wow. You'd be nice. Say, you're so serious. Say. Kiss, just good. Kiss, kiss, kiss.
He still comes to the house through the tunnel from his enclosure.
Carl's film, with Tony Soper's commentary, tells a remarkable story of a chimp saved from being eaten to the unlikely habitat of a luxurious Kenya home.
It's a long way and a long time, 9 years, from that special day he came aboard a ferry on the Zaire River.
Bizarre though this may seem, this individual is now in safe and caring hands and can probably never be returned to the wild. That's if the wild is still out there, the tropical rainforests of Africa. Now these are really wild chimps, at home in the Bidongo forest, to the west of the great Congo Zaire forest, where Mazet came from and was rescued by the Amanns. Below this fig tree, where they are feeding and arguing, they have some human friends too, with whom, incidentally, we share 98% of our DNA. The Bidongo Conservation Field Station welcomes students and researchers from various institutes, including vets, foresters, and conservation biologists. Started in 1990, groups of chimps have been habituated, and depending on the food supply available at the time, they can easily be tracked and recorded in great detail. What they eat and how they use the forest is important not only to the chimps themselves, but to the management of their home, which at one time was in great danger, as we'll see. time to move on. So far so good, but a bit of a crash landing. But they're pretty agile high in the trees, or with 4 feet safely on the ground, on the forest floor. Obviously part of the research is examining the age and health of the trees. It's all part of the learning process for students who will inherit Uganda's rich forests and hopefully be able to protect them and win. There have been and will be problems later, cases of losing.
Alexandria was poisoned between 1950 and 60s, so that's why you can see it is dead.
A poison tree rotting away, no use to chimps. But this one is, although it's been felled. Inside this palm tree is a source of sodium, and the chimps effectively fell the tree by making a small hole which is gradually enlarged.
They first of all make a small hole whereby they can start removing the wood from inside. So as they continue making it, definitely the whole thing becomes weaker. Then as wind comes, it falls.
Mobility is crucial to chimps, both in the trees or on the ground. Forests are a target for poachers, and snares injure and kill. As explained here, the snare is a simple deadly noose which operates at random, sometimes catching people, and it's very cheap to make. But in the past, there was a much greater threat than snares for bushmeat. This, fortunately for the chimps and the forest, is a derelict sawmill. Its plant appetite would have consumed thousands of mature trees and cleared the land to look like this. Though this is still happening for a very different reason, as we'll see. Nature is moving back as the forest closes in again.
Like this, like a human being when he's...
It's where your mahogany table may have come from. This was for the plywood.
Yeah, this construction was for the plywood. Could call it the plywood industry. But the problem, ever since it was
Fruit bats feed at night in the surrounding forest and roost in here dry and safe, just hanging around. Once the chimps' home was under threat, but today they're making a comeback as the plants they depend on gradually creep in, little winners. Some eventually to grow into trees again. And here's one that proves the value of rainforest species. A busy lizzie, a treatment for blood cancer, leukemia in children. There must be many other plants in the jungles of the planet that have uses we can only dream of. For medicines, food, building materials, and so on and so on. Tough opportunists are arriving too, baboons. Less tough inhabitants of Budongo are the butterflies that come in all shapes, sizes and colours, a reminder, if needed, of the huge biodiversity of this kind of place. chimps, man, wood. An interesting combination that Budongo students are working on and have been since 1990. A big male chimp is a very strong animal and can be unpredictable, maybe as a result of stress in the group now under study. Another cause of stress may be the proximity of the local people who use the forest and are encroaching on the chimp's home, and bananas may be tempting. Sorting this out needs the skills and knowledge of forestry experts and wildlife biologists who are trying to find a compromise between not cutting down the forest and cutting it down, like this. And this is not caused just by the local need for land, but a much more powerful pressure behind which is an influence that is apparently bad for us all and our health. It's sugar. The hornbill is at the end of this sad state of affairs. What was once a varied home to hornbills, to big buffaloes and tiny butterflies now resembles a burnt wasteland occupied by a few pioneering huts, hungry people, and an even hungrier and more powerful industry. Sugar may be a good crop for the Ugandan government and certain large international corporations, but it now seems increasing obesity, cancer and diabetes can be attributed to the great amount of sugar in our diet, often hidden. It is addictive. The traditional diet of the local Ugandans is much healthier than the sugar-rich Western diet. There are attempts to reforest some areas, though pine trees will never support the biodiversity of the original native forest. Native trees are being planted too, though they take longer to grow, and to a poor local family, the next meal that day is the priority. And every year there are more mouths to feed, as all of Africa's population goes on growing, and fast.
This one is you.
So is there a solution
Chimpanzee.
here?
Picture of a chimpanzee. This chimpanzee is called the boba, which is found in Budongo forest.
Carvings from locally selected wood, plus the real thing, will attract tourists and income to Uganda's forests. Budongo's chimps, with the cooperation of some of the local people, not the poachers of course, have become the subject of a classic study, as they have in Tanzania with Dr. Jane Goodall. The Budongo Forest Project was taken over in 2005 by the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland, and the Edinburgh Zoo is keen to educate the public about chimpanzees and the future of their home, not only in Uganda but elsewhere in Africa, where they are mostly under threat. It's a great team effort to save not only the chimps but their rainforest home. They're a so-called flagship species. And that could also apply to Mzee, the now famous chimp that Carl and Catherine Aman rescued on the Congo Zaire River way back in 1988. A much older Masai continued to live a lot in the home of the Omans near Mount Kenya's forest, or what was left of it. But since then, a great deal has changed. This enclosure at Sweetwaters is a safe home for rescued chimps. It welcomes tourists, and the income goes to help chimps in the wild and the forests. Like Masai, there are no wild chimps in Kenya. But that far-sighted country has come up with a plan that is proving to be a solution to having both rainforests and wildlife living side by side. As a reminder of the richness of rainforests, there are nimble-footed parrots helping spread seeds far and wide from both ends. Bees pollinating, helping many plants prosper. Webs of life in the treetops. More dramatic links in the food chain, a bird of prey. And the possible prey, a turrico, another seed dispersal agent, a birdwatcher's delight, a bonus for Kenya's ecotourism in the Mount Kenya National Park. And a tree-climbing cat, the leopard, a great though elusive attraction. On a sustainable long-term basis, hardwood and valuable timber is important to Kenya, and also because rainforests provide water for lower altitudes. They're the so-called water towers of the country, to be treated with care. This was home to a mouse. He'll have to find another home, if possible. Some of his options may now be charcoal, an important fuel to local people, and also sent in large quantities to the towns and cities. But here's a solution. Protect the forest, help the local people. Mike Pridgejohn and his team are part of a very ambitious project called Rhino Ark, involving not just rhinos, but much else. Some dangerous, like buffalo, which may charge out of the bush at any time. Rhino Ark consists of a long electrified fence around Kenya's water towers to protect what is left of them. It started on Mount Kenya, then they fenced the Aberdares Mountains, then the Oburu Highlands, and everyone is delighted, both buffaloes and elephants, and local officials and farmers whose crops are now protected. Hopefully the idea will be copied around the world as forests come under increasing human pressure. It certainly could apply to chimps in Uganda, for example, though it does cost money.
can see the trees which are around here. They are big, they are good for wood, but they are not touched at all by anybody. Meaning, the people have realized the importance of the forest, the importance of the wildlife, the importance of their ecosystem, the importance of adapting to their own climate.
Even better, there are now many efforts to replant, especially with native species.
They are now good. You can replace those ones which have been eaten by those animals.
It's become politically correct, worth voting for perhaps. Maybe a way of life for the future, involving the next generation.
This is the practical gospel about the conservation that we are having. We have about 7,000 seedlings which are ready to be planted. We also have about 10,000 which are not yet ready to be planted. Therefore, we have 70,000 currently.
So from the still vast jungles of Congo Zaire, from where Mzee was brought to Kenya, to the Amazon in South America and Asia. It seems trees may be winning, but only with a lot of help from their friends. Both trees and people can do a great job for the whole planet. Showing what can be done was Wangari Maathai, who started the famous Green Belt movement in Kenya.
To forget that we humans, as a species, we need the other species much more than they need us. And if other species disappeared, we would definitely not survive on this planet. But if we disappeared, there are many species which would probably say, thank God.
Green shoots sprouting in an old log. The next generation, perhaps. A baby chimp like Mzee once was, an icon of Africa's rainforests, which increasingly many people are trying to turn losers into winners.